Welcome, Sean Campus. We are in our Sunday Strength. Today, we're going to be answering the question, if our marriage was doing well, what would it be doing? Like, what are we headed towards? What are the practices that we need to be doing? What would be happening? And I think that's always a good thing because sometimes you get so focused on trying to fix all the problems that are happening in your marriage, like how do we communicate better, or what's the how do we do away with this issue? And to be honest, a lot of it is you just being able to start doing things that mean your relationship would go well, more than it is you trying to figure out how to resolve what's already happened. And I think that goes along with the idea that a lot of the things that we try to focus on that have to do with our past, we don't even have control over those things. And yet we stay on them so much. And so there's a couple of premises that I think that you're probably operating on that will prevent you from having a thriving marriage scenario. And so let's do those first before we get to actually what would help you to have a thriving marriage, or get you started on that at least. So one of the things that's going to hinder you from being able to get to where you want to be in your marriage is, and we'll put them together, but they're two different things. One is you looking too far ahead of what's going to happen later. Like, if I put up with this situation, like, this is going to end up bad. Or if you are so stuck in what has happened that you're not being able to focus on what's actually in this moment. Okay. And so there's still those two things where you're not able to be present in your relationship and really be able to focus on what's needed, that's going to hinder you from being able to move forward. There's a second one, which is it's a sneaky sentence that we have in our relationships and in our life. And I think as a society, we're infested with this concept that we feel like, man, these situations need to be different for me to be okay. And that sentence will keep you from doing anything that means thriving, right? The idea that you would say, like, if the situation was better, then I'd be all right. If my partner was better, then I'd be all right. That's going to actually keep you from moving in a different direction. Why? Well, because your belief system and what you've kind of lined your mind and your body with is the idea that there's a contingency on whether you're going to do goodness or not. So I think those two scenarios, the idea of you looking behind you or too far in front of you, is going to cause a situation for you. And then I think that um, the idea that you would focus on how other people are doing things or waiting for somebody to do something different for you to be okay, instead of you figuring out what it is that you need to do to create a different scenario for yourself and for your relationship and for the other person. Um, that's really going to stop you. And the third thing that I think is going to keep you from being able to have a thriving marriage, before I give you the things that it's going to take, is for you to not realize that it's the rules and the structure that we create that actually gives us the freedom in our relationship. And so I tell people a lot, you know, you can you can do 100 miles per hour in the 55 zone if you want to, in the single lane 55 zone if you want to, and maybe you make it and get to your destination quickly like you're planning, but maybe you don't. And so you raise the risk, and not only that, you kind of take the freedom of other people away. And so what does that have to do with our marriages? Well, what it has to do with is you have to have a structure inside of you that creates lines that actually give you the ability to operate different in your relationship. So if you don't have those lines, like, we just went over the idea that somebody else has to do something different. If you don't have that line that says, you know what, I have a rule for myself that means I actually have to uphold my own standard and be the best version of myself at all times. No matter how somebody else is interacting, it's up to me to do the most that I can possibly do with what I have. And so I got to stay focused on that scenario. Another law or line that you might want to have is that love is my operation mode. I'm not doing anything different than that. I'm going to stay in that mode no matter what. And so I'm going to do and focus all my energy on being able to follow those rules or whatever rules you set out, so that I can actually create the freedom that I'm trying to create in my life. How do those things give you freedom? Well, immediately they might not feel like you're free. If you're doing the 55 behind a slow truck, in a single lane um, road, and there's no passing, you might feel like there's no freedom. But the truth is, you get there under control, and you're in a scenario that means that you're not taking risks that would limit your freedoms. And so that's a huge deal. It's the same thing in your relationship. If you put love forward and maybe it doesn't yield the results that you want on the other end, or that you were thinking that you would get, you still in your heart will feel the sense of peace and free that you need to feel to keep moving forward and keep building inside of your relationship. It's only when we start needing other people to do something else that we really start feeling trapped and angst about where our life is headed and what's going on. Okay, and so those three things, you're going to have to iron those out before you get into the idea of what we actually can do to do thriving marriage practices. Okay, so I would say the first thriving marriage practice that you have to do is you need to be able to set out something as a couple, that says this is where we're headed, right? This is kind of our idea of functioning together. Like, this is what the feel is that we want to be able to have. This is what our interaction is. I think that's a really important piece. And the more that you can do that, and the more that you can check in with each other about that's it's going to help your marriage to actually be thriving, because you're on the same page with that. If you're able to create a practice of understanding forgiveness and shortcomings with each other, like being able to see the heart of the person versus the behaviors of the person, that is an interaction that helps your marriage to thrive. Because instead of you seeing that your partner did the worst thing, you understand that you chose somebody who actually isn't at their core a bad person or hurting, or a person who wants to hurt somebody. Instead, they might be a person who's hurting. They might be a person who is struggling through a scenario. They might be at a certain place in their life. And when that's happening, there's a lot of things that go on. They might even be, you might be ahead of them in the work that needs to be done on the inside out front. And so you just being able to understand the idea of forgiveness and not being responsible for punishing that person or for setting them straight or for creating a different life. The love that you give creates the scenario or the place where they can actually grow. And so that creates a thriving marriage, because at some rate, your partner appreciates that. And then they don't have to battle you. And so if they're doing their battle versus themselves, and they're doing a battle versus you, then it really takes away your ability to thrive in your relationship. I would think that you also have to, and not, I don't, even, I will take away that. I'm going to reword this differently. It's not that I will think. I know that you will need to have some kind of spiritual component inside of your relationship. The more that you put a spiritual component inside your relationship, I'm not willing to say that it needs to be this kind of spiritual component. You two as a couple, and that's probably part of the thriving aspect. You two as a couple get to build what that is for the two of you, and work hard at really being able to grow that, because that look or that idea that says, hey, we're spiritually minded and we're connected around what it is that we're doing spiritually, gives you the conversation for growth in your individual lives, but then also in your married life, and together as a couple. So it's a huge deal for you to be able to add that spirituality component to be able to have a thriving marriage. And then the last thing that I'll tell you is the acceptance of being able to grow within your marriage. And so frequently couples struggle because they don't deal with the processes that people go through in life. And so somebody seemingly does some changes, and or uncovers another part of who they are, and we get rocked in our relationship because we're like, who is this? What is going on here? This is not what I signed up for. And our flexibility, our ability to be resilient, our ability to continue to love, all those things are needed in that moment. And it's really difficult to see somebody growing into a new era of life, especially as you continue to spend more time with each other. Let's say that a couple gets married at 20. Nobody's the same at 30 that they were at 20. And so, can you weather the storm of those changes? And that's a twofold thing, because as much as somebody, it's going to be useful for somebody to weather the storm of another person changing. We need to be mindful of the changes that we're also making inside of the relationship, and how our changes can affect our partner, and can we do those changes in a way that communicates what's needed and how those changes will happen, and be able to discuss um, that that kind of interaction and growth. Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus one, and it's the fifth one. And so the bonus is your mindset on growth through your marriage is the biggest deal. It's, I would say, right up there with the spirituality aspect of things. If you want your marriage to thrive, you need to be in a place of, look, I'm really trying to grow me. You can't be in a place of, I want this relationship to work, it's not working. If they do something else, I'll be okay. If You can't be in that place. Your mindset, in order for your marriage to thrive, has to be in a place of, I'm really trying to work on growing me. I'm picking one thing a month, and I'm just trying to hammer down on being better at that scenario. And it doesn't even have to be specifically with respect to your marriage. It just maybe is an internal thing that you just really want to work on and try to get through that month. And so, you, as a bonus, you being able to work on the things that you need to work on as a person to build differently, and you kind of will know like the components that are missing for you to be in the relationship, whether it's a tolerance about certain things, or whether it's becoming another person that, or becoming the person that can do certain things in the relationship. Like maybe you don't have, um, maybe your partner likes to stay at home and you like to go out, and you don't have a tolerance for staying at home, right? And so maybe you're starting to build on like, okay, let me find the joy in that scenario. How do I become the person that could actually experience joy, even in that scenario too, right? And I would say the flip. I mean, as a couple, if that other person is saying like, man, I don't really like going out, can you work on becoming that person? And so, the more that you have that kind of mindset versus these matter of fact scenarios of like, I'm not doing this, or I'm not that person, um, then the more that you have that mindset that says, like, I'm going to really work on something where I'm growing me, communicate that with your partner, and you guys can talk to each other and really work on those things together. I think those four things are going to help you, and that bonus is definitely going to take you to a different kind of level. And so, use those thriving marriage practices today, and you'll see things start to change in your relationship. If you need any help, we have our marriage communication masterclass that just happened actually yesterday. You can sign up for that to catch that, and then we'll go live again um, on on the end of at the end of September. And so, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If not, we'll see you guys on our coffee hangout. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.